Let's meet at the library. Okay.
Hey everyone, it's Julia and welcome to my channel, Shakespeare and Such. This is the second part of my yearly wrap-up where I'm going to be talking about the worst books I read in 2017. Again, I'm going to do 7 instead of 17 because that's just a lot of books. But also, one honorable mention. So let's get to it. Much like with my favorites of the year, this is going to be in no particular order, but I'm going to start off with You by Kepnes. People love this book, and I don't know why. I just don't. I didn't find it very scary or creepy. In fact, the creepiest moments, I think, were just Joe, the main character. That was his name, right? Yep. The creepiest moments were just when the main character, Joe, was like, just thinking really, like, deviant sexual thoughts about the girl whose name I forget. Guinevere Beck. Lord. It was hard to read, and not in a way that's like, it was so hard to read because, like, it was so scary. Like, no, it was just hard to read because I hated everyone. Straight up everyone. It would have been a different story if Beck had been likable, because then I would have been rooting for her to get away from Joe. Instead, Beck was insufferable, and I didn't care what happened to her, or Joe, or anyone. So, there's that. Also, people completely misrepresent this book because they say it's written in the second person, like, you walk into the bookstore, you blah, blah, blah. It's not. I mean, it's written in first person because Joe's like, I climb up your window, I see you, blah, blah, blah. So he says you because that's how talking works, but it's not written in the second person, so yes. Oh, and it's safe to say that every book I'm talking about in this video is going straight into my bag for donations that's behind me, so yes. Some of them I also don't have physically anymore because I already got rid of them, so goodbye. The next book that I'm going to talk about is hands down my biggest disappointment for the year, and that's The Queen of the Night by Alexander Chee. I mean, first of all, this book is freaking stunning. It's beautiful. So I was, really excited to have it on my shelves. I can't keep this on my shelves without feeling frustrated. This book got off to a really, really strong start. The plot is about this opera singer who is, she's offered a role in a new opera, and as she reads the whole script, she realizes that it's about her life story. So she's like, who is this writer? Why, how does he know this about me? And so she goes on a journey to talk to the people who know her full story and see basically like who spilled the beans. And it is, at the beginning, it's quite incredible. It starts off with her as a young girl and how hard her life was in America and what her parents were like and how she became an orphan. And I mean, it just keeps going. She joins a circus. She travels to Paris. She becomes a prostitute at one point, which honestly you'd think would be like a low point of the story because it's like, yikes, that's actually one of the most interesting parts of the story. And she meets her best friend who's super cool, Euphrosyne. I don't speak French. And then the men started coming into her life, and the story sucked. There are 3 romantic interests. The first one we don't really count because he's garbage and she knows he's garbage. The second one she likes but I didn't like. And then the third one I actually liked and he was irrelevant. So that all sucked. And this book, by the way, is huge. It is, I mean, it's nearly 600 pages. It's really big. I listened to it as an audiobook, and it was a journey. And it just, the ending, and the middle was so boring. Like, literally, there's probably at least 100 pages in the middle we could have gotten rid of. We get a synopsis of every opera she goes to see, and I'm like, not everything has to be symbolism, babe. Let's just watch the opera. Like, say, I went to the opera. Move along. I don't need to know the plot of every show you see or sing or like. And just, Yeah, this was a huge letdown for me. It's a bummer. Next up, I'll talk about another one I listened to on audio. That's And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And you must be saying to yourself, whoa, Julia, is this book on the wrong list? Agatha Christie? A classic? No, it's on my least favorite list. I thought this murder was so boring. It was a snooze fest. Every time, it was so obvious who was going to die next. And then there's no... How do I make this make sense? You would think that with the narrowing pool of suspects, you'd become more interested because you're like, oh, it wasn't them. So then how would this, like you're trying to piece it together. There were no clues along the way except for personality traits that enabled you to try to figure it out, which, by the way, I did figure it out just based on personalities. So suck it, Agatha Christie. But, in my mind, detectives solve mysteries by finding clues and then using deductive reasoning to make sense of what those clues mean. I don't think a mystery novel can be good unless there are clues for the reader to use to try to put together the mystery. Frankly, I'm going to make a whole video about this because I have very strong feelings on this. But if I don't have clues that the author is planting for me, I think your mystery sucks because it's not doing its job. I'm just reading about someone else solving it. I want to solve it with them. Yeah, so I just didn't like it. And then the end was so stupid because, spoiler alert, it's how the title says they were all dead. So there's no one to be like, I killed you all. It's just like this weird trip to Scotland Yard, and they're like, gosh, what a weird mystery. Oh, look, this letter was delivered. Here's how I killed them, and here's why I did it, and my reasons are boring as hell. So, I didn't like it. Wow, I forgot how passionately I didn't like this book. That's enough about that one, I think. Next up is Forbidden by Tabitha Zuma. First things first, this book is about incest, so if that is an uncomfortable topic for you, you can skip ahead, or just never read this book. Highly suggest anyways, even if you don't care about incest. I read Flowers in the Attic, and I was like, this is twisted, but a great story, so I thought, okay, we got the barbed wire on the cover, looks dramatic. These characters were unlikable. They were boring. I felt for them a little bit because they had to take care of their younger siblings, and so I'm really, God, this just shows you what an adult I am now, that I gravitate towards stories with parents and caregivers and pregnancy plot lines. So I thought oh, they're taking care of their little siblings. This will be cool. That was literally the highlight of the book, was just when they got all their siblings to get along. I was like, this is adorable. The rest of the book was and then the ending, felt like a joke. It felt like she wrote it and sent it to her editor to be April Fools, except it was actually the ending. I didn't like it. Here's another one I know I've already mentioned. Bright Young Things by Anna Godberson. Oh, I was so young and naive when I bought this book literally years ago, and I guess I'm older and still naive for thinking that I would enjoy this because this was just not good. There's a lot to like in here. It's flappers, 1920s, city girls going to the country. Ooh, wow. But all the main characters were just super dumb. I know when I talked about this. I talked about this for a decent amount of time in my, Booktubeathon wrap-up. So if you want to hear about it, you can do that. But all I feel about saying about this is that I think it's a book, the first book in a trilogy or 4 books. I'm certainly never going to continue the series, and can't wait to get this book out of my life because it was boring. And you know what? You know what the worst part is? is that in the 11th hour, there was something actually interesting that I low-key would be like, yeah, I'd read more about that. But, no, I don't care about any of these girls enough. I'm interested to see where the relationship with the pilot would go, but I won't. I won't put myself through that. I have learned my lesson with The Wrath on the Dawn, and I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to let one plot line amidst many suck me into a sequel that I know I'm going to dislike. On the record. All right, 2 more plus the honorable mention. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about the honorable mention right now, because the last 2 I really just did not like the most. So I feel like I should save them for last. The honorable mention is The Grim Grotto by Lemony Snicket. I listened to the entirety of A Series of Unfortunate Events last December through the beginning of this year, and I loved it, except for The Grim Grotto. That book sucked. It had the most annoying guardian of any of the books, and if you've read the books, you know they've had guardians such as Count Olaf and Aunt Josephine and people who will drive you bananas. But, God, what is his name? The boat captain? Or submarine? It's just, he was the worst. Everything was everything he said was just He'd be like, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Just speak normally. It was exhausting listening to him. And then, like, his daughter or niece or whoever, Fiona, what was the point of having her? She didn't do us any good. And then, like, if the Quagmire triplets aren't involved, do I even care in the later books? Just a thought. Yeah, not my fave. All right, last two. I don't have anything physical to hold up because one was a library book and one I got rid of as soon as humanly possible. The first one I'm going to be talking about is the library book. That's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. That's a classic. People love it. I did not. I buddy read this with one of my actual best friends in the world, and she read it faster than me, and she was like, oh, it's so good. And I was like, yes, I'm going to love it, and we can bond over this book. There was one paragraph that was beautiful, and I would paint on a wall if I could, and the rest of the book was like garbage. And I know it's supposed to be, I get that it's supposed to be a lot about mental health and like how hard and turbulent things are in your 20s, and I don't know, it just was all so boring to me. The main character, whose name escapes me, Esther? Something with an E. I'm going to call her Esther. I think it might have been Esther. She was just so lackluster. And I mean, I don't need her to be like this big dramatic character, but certainly, what is my hair doing? Certainly I expected just to feel for her in any sort of way. But no, other than the like fig tree analogy, which is beautiful, and I will like put a link for it down below if you've never read it, because it really describes what it's like being a young adult and seeing all these different paths your life could take. Other than that, the book was like blah. I stopped myself because apparently my noise for everything is just, and I didn't want to just go at every book because it's not very eloquent. But that's how I felt. And also there was one really weird scene towards the end, spoilers maybe, where, oh God, I'm trying to remember it. She had sex with this guy, and then she was like hemorrhaging, like bleeding like crazy, and then she went to the doctor and they were like, and like it was just never explained, and I was like, something is wrong. Like, as the reader, this is the moment I felt the most concern for her, and I'm like, your body's like bleeding, and like no one bothered to be like, oh, here's what happened. What? I don't know. Okay. Here comes the last book. This one's a doozy. This one's the actual worst book I read this year. And I know I said these were not in any particular order. This one was the worst. I read, let me look up what the author's name is, because I don't know. I read The Beast Within, A Tale of Beauty's Prince by Serena Valentino. Where do I begin? I guess I should preface this with, this was shortly after the live-action Beauty and the Beast came out, and I was/am obsessed with that movie, and also Luke Evans as Gaston. My compliments to the casting director. And so when I read online that this book was one of the more sympathetic portrayals of Gaston within various media, I was like, let's give it a go. And I thought it would be interesting to read from the Beast's perspective instead of Belle's. It was just so confusing and bad and weird. I'm really not sure where to begin with it. I mean, first of all, the writing style, very fan fiction. Not bad fan fiction. Probably something that, like, I could write and be, like, proud of. And I'm, like, an alright writer. So I'd be like, yeah, this sounds nice. But, like, as a published book, you're like, okay. The characters just made no sense, and the timeline made no sense. And, like, Gaston was the Beast's friend as a child, which was, like, kind of cool and different. But then the Beast was, like, so evil for no reason. Like, he was in love with this girl, and then she was, like, actually a peasant, so he was like, never mind. But then, like, her sisters were witches, and that's who cursed him. And then, like, he got a new fiance, but he only wanted her to help break this curse. And it was just so odd. Odd is the only word that I can use to describe it. It was just really weird. It's like you could have made it a story from the Beast's perspective and not changed so much, but there was so much about the story that was completely different and weird, and there were, like, allusions to the other books in the series, like the companion novels, and like, oh, Ursula, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, don't bring Ursula into this. Let this story exist on its own, for God's sake. What is this? Once Upon a Time? Come on now. And then it just, I mean, it was so short, but it just kept going and going. And the timeline was weird because Belle didn't start in it, but then she showed up. Then the story, like, continued, and then she was at the end. It was not good. I'm so sorry, Serena Valentino. No disrespect. She'll never see this. It's fine. Yeah, those were all of the worst books that I read in 2017. If you've read any of these books and share or disagree with my opinions, that's fun. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on these books. I know, especially, like, The Bell Jar is hugely popular, and probably I might get some flack for that. It's okay. That's what opinions are for. You know, variety is the spice of life. We gotta have some differing thoughts on something or other, or else this world would be boring. So, yes, please leave me a comment about either your feelings on these books or some of the worst books that you read, because I'm one of those people who really likes reading negative reviews, because I'm a monster. I don't know. Yes, thank you so much for watching, and you'll see more of me soon. Bye! And I am certainly never going to continue. I'm allergic to it.